Good morning, boys and girls. Today is a very special day in church history. Some of you may already know what day it is, but for those of you who don't, I have a clue here to help us figure it out. So I've got some palm branches. That's right, today is Palm Sunday. Today is the start of Holy Week, which is the week that includes the events leading up to and including Jesus' death and resurrection. This week is part of God's huge redemptive plan to save the world, and we're going to be learning all about it. On Palm Sunday, we celebrate Jesus entering Jerusalem on a donkey. It was a day of huge celebration. People were waving palm branches and shouting, "Hosanna!" They thought their king had come. So I have 3 eyewitness friends here today who were there, saw all the events, were part of the big party, and they're going to tell us more about it. My first friend is Peter. Peter, why don't you come on up and tell everyone what you saw on Palm Sunday?
Well, as y'all heard, my name's Peter, and you've probably heard of me, because I'm a big deal. So, I am a fisherman and a friend of Jesus, and meeting Jesus completely changed my life. It started about 3 years ago. My brother Andrew had heard our friend John talking about Jesus and saying, here is the one, the Lamb who takes away the sin of the whole world. He called him the Messiah. You see, we live during a really hard time. We don't have our own land anymore. The Romans are our rulers, and they don't treat us really well. So we've been waiting for God to send us a Savior and to give us our own home back. But anyway, so going back to my time when I first met Jesus. So here's how it happened. I was sitting on my boat with my brother Andrew. We'd been trying to catch fish like we had for a long time. And we saw Jesus walking alongside the sea. And there's a long story to it, but we ended up with this boat full of fish. And Jesus looked at me, and he looked at my brother Andrew, and he said, "Come, follow me." And we just knew we had to go with him. I can't explain it. When Jesus says something, it has power to it. And so we left immediately, everything behind. And then Jesus came and he talked to 2 of our other friends, James and John, and they left everything behind too. And that's just how it works with Jesus. He says something and it happens. Anyway, we were all really excited because, this man was obviously something very impressive. And so we followed him, and we got to be his close personal friends. Jesus ended up having 12 of us, and I've gotten to see some incredible stuff. So, for example, Jesus has cast out demons, and he has healed diseases of people who never thought that they could be healed from these things. And he even brought people back from the dead. That was pretty surprising. And one day, maybe you've heard of this one. One day he fed 5,000 people. 5,000 people using just 2 loaves. Nope. There was 2 fish and 5 loaves. Anyway, we'd been waiting, and we were super hungry, and we'd been listening to Jesus talk all day, and people were tired and crabby and all that sort of stuff. And Jesus told us to go get food for these people. And I thought, how are we going to get food for 5,000 plus people? We don't have the money for that. We don't have the food for that. But then this little boy comes along, and he gives us his lunch. And Jesus tells us, go feed the people with this. He blessed the food, and he kept breaking the pieces off and giving it to us. And we fed all those 5,000 people. And not only that, we had 12 baskets left over. That's incredible, isn't it? Anyway, I just kept thinking back to Moses in Egypt and how God gave manna, and the rest of the crowd was thinking that too. And I was doggone certain Jesus was going to be made king that day. People were really excited about him. So after seeing Jesus do all these things, I'm pretty convinced he's the Messiah. And I know God has finally sent us our king who is going to deliver us from the Romans. He's definitely powerful enough. But then, the funny thing is Jesus just doesn't seem interested in that. I don't understand it. He's not interested in defeating the Romans, and that frustrates me and confuses me. Instead, lately he's been talking about how he's going to get killed. And, I don't understand that. In fact, on our way here, I pulled Jesus aside and I said, you can't say those sorts of things. This would never happen to you. You raised people from the dead. How could you die? But Jesus said I didn't understand, and that I was putting my mind on earthly things. I don't know why he'd respond that way. I just want him to be safe, Anyway, but we came into Jerusalem today, and oh my goodness, it has been exciting. I tell you what, everyone is praising God here, and they're calling Jesus the King who comes in the name of the Lord. And people have been cutting down palm branches, and they lay them on the road when Jesus walks by, and they lay out their coats and everything. And I just, it's the atmosphere in the air is so exciting. And I know Jesus hasn't been wrong yet, but I'm almost convinced that if things keep going the way they are, Jesus could be king by the end of the weekend. Oh, and that would be exciting. I feel like my whole world is about to change again, just like that first day when I met Jesus. And there's so much happiness and excitement. And in fact, I've got another friend here, Mary Magdalene. She could tell you, she's got a great story. She can tell you a ton about what Jesus has done in her life. So, Mary, how about you come over here and tell these fine people about Jesus?
Sure, Peter. Thanks for inviting me to come share my story. So my name is Mary Magdalene, and my story is one of being completely remade by Jesus. You see, before I met Jesus, my life was really miserable. I was controlled by 7 evil spirits, and I made a lot of sinful choices that left me with so much shame and embarrassment. I felt like I needed to hide away because of everything that I had done wrong. And even worse than that was the feeling of being trapped. I felt like I'd fallen down a deep, dark pit, and I was just stuck in my sin. But Jesus looked at me, even knowing how bad I was. He didn't turn away from me and let me keep hiding. He came to me and just spoke. And with his powerful words, the evil spirits left me. I can't tell you what that is like, to be totally healed. I feel like a completely new person. I feel so light and free and happy. All I want to do is follow Jesus and tell other people about him. All I want to do is be near him. He makes me feel so loved. Every time I'm with him, it's like having a warm hug from your mom and dad. He's the only person who knows me completely and loves me fully, even though he knows everything I've done wrong. The only thing I can do in response is worship him. And Jesus is always like that. He's always moving towards people with compassion. Everybody people thinks are gross and everyone else ignores, Jesus befriends them. I could tell you so many stories of people who were outcasts that became some of Jesus's closest friends. Like, for example, one time Jesus was invited to a meal at some of the religious leaders' house. And these were like the extra holy people, the really good guys. And they didn't seem to have a lot of sin. Well, you'll never believe this. But while Jesus was there at the meal, this woman who had a really bad reputation came in the room. Everyone knew she was a sinner, and she would not have been invited to this meal by the extra holy people. But she heard where Jesus was, and she couldn't stay away. She brought an expensive bottle of perfume that she had and went into the house. She was so overwhelmed with her love for Jesus and thankfulness that he loved her and forgave her for all her sin, that she couldn't stop crying because it was so beautiful to be loved and known by Jesus. And Jesus didn't kick her out of the fancy meal and tell her she wasn't dressed well enough or special enough to be there. She washed Jesus' feet with her tears and hair, kissed them, and poured all the expensive perfume on them. Jesus loved her and received her gift of washing his feet. He saw her tears and cared for her. Well, you can imagine the religious leaders at the meal were pretty upset at her and at Jesus for letting her touch him. They were whispering to each other that if he had any idea how bad she was, he never would have let her in and never let her touch him. But Jesus knew their hearts and what they were saying. And Jesus told them that he knew everything bad that she had ever done, but he had forgiven her. He even said that because she was forgiven much, she loved much. Well, Jesus is always surprising us with stuff like that. He's touched leopards and other people that are unclean and healed them of their diseases. He's become friends with people like Zacchaeus. He cares about people from other nations, people who are sick and hurting, even little kids. You would think Jesus' disciples would at least be all the good ones, but even they were outcasts. Jesus picked people like Matthew to be his closest friends. Matthew was a tax collector that everyone hated because he stole money from people. But Jesus called Matthew to follow him. To be hated by everyone and suddenly have someone like Jesus love you and want you to be his friend is such a cool feeling. I'm so excited to be here in Jerusalem on this special day when Jesus is coming in to get ready for the Passover meal. Everyone's been singing and dancing all day today. We're just having one big party. There are children singing about Jesus in the temple, palm branches waving through the air, loud cheering. I feel like we're all united in this beautiful song of worship and joy and celebration. You know, I would think all of this would make Jesus as happy as it's making me, but there seems to be a weight and a sadness about Jesus. You know, he's been talking a lot about dying. I don't know why he'd be talking about death on a day like this. And why would Jesus have to die when everyone's so busy worshiping him? I can't shake this worry that something bad is going to happen, though. I'm really concerned for Jesus. Well, I have another friend here. His name is John, and he's been with us today too. So I want him to share with you his story. Hey, John, come on over.
Hi guys. My name is John. I'm one of Jesus's closest friends, which is actually really kind of surprising. So my brother is James, and I'm a friend of Peter and Andrew. And you know, Peter told you how we all met Jesus that day. Anyway. It makes sense to me that God would choose somebody like maybe Peter and Andrew and even my brother James. Like they're fishermen. They kind of own their own business. And I'm just a young guy though. Like I really don't have any power or authority. I don't have any money. I'm a little awkward. I have a little bit of an anger issue too. I'll probably tell you a little bit more about that later. Try to keep my temper under control, but sometimes it boils out, you know. But you know, the funny thing about Jesus picking me is just that's kind of what he does. Jesus does things really differently from other people, and it's incredible. So let me give you an example, okay? Jesus doesn't just pick strange people. Like he doesn't just pick he doesn't pick the good-looking and the really religious people. He doesn't pick the strong, like all the people that you'd think a king would pick, right? Like if he's gonna go be a king. But even the things that Jesus says are strange. He keeps teaching us these things. He's saying like, you have to love your enemies and do good to those who don't treat you really well. And he even says like you have to serve people who hate you. Now, can you imagine that? Like that's so strange. Why would you do that? I mean, it's not like Jesus doesn't have a lot of enemies himself. Our religious leaders, the people like the scribes and the Pharisees, they hate Jesus these days. And he's told a lot of people to turn from their sin and told them that like they can't just trust that they're special people because Abraham is their father, and that does not make people happy. Oh no, it doesn't at all. And so he's got a lot of people who are talking about killing him and that sort of stuff. Like they're angry enough to kill him. It's funny because my idea of a king is someone who's strong enough, right, to stop what people are saying, all the bad things that they're saying about him. A king who shows that he's strong by defeating people and freeing us from Romans. But Jesus talks about a kingdom made up of weak people. He says that his kingdom is like a little seed or like a buried treasure, and it's not something big and flashy like I would expect. So here's another example of how Jesus' way is really different. And it actually happened on our way here to Jerusalem. So we were passing through a Samaritan village, and they wouldn't let Jesus come in because Samaritans, they just don't like us Jews. Remember how I said I have an anger problem? Well, I thought it would be a good idea. I think you'd agree with me. For God to send fire down from heaven, right? And teach those Samaritans a lesson. Burn up their whole village. Well, Jesus told me my anger wasn't right. And that's not how we treat people who aren't nice to us. I just think that's really strange, don't you? Anyway, I hope Jesus is okay defending himself soon. I really worry about what Jesus' enemies might do to him. See, Jesus recently did something really incredible. It's an amazing miracle, but it's for some reason got people really angry at him. So he has this friend called Lazarus, and Lazarus got really sick, and I thought, well, we should go over there and help Lazarus get ready, like get healed. Jesus heals tons of people, but Jesus waited, and he waited for 4 days after Lazarus died to finally go to his friend Lazarus, even though Jesus loved Lazarus a whole lot. But then we get there, and Jesus does this incredible thing. He calls Lazarus to come out of the grave, and this dead man comes alive. And it was incredible, I tell you. I mean, you think everyone would worship Jesus after that, and a lot of people did, but somehow they're, excuse me, our religious leaders are even more angry at Jesus than usual. And I think that's because, it's because they're jealous. I really do. Well, the Passover feast is this week, and Jesus sent a couple of us disciples out, and he told us, go find a donkey and its colt, and bring them back to him. So we did, and I could see that Jesus had a plan. I just didn't know what it was. And we set our coats on the donkey and the colts, and he started riding into Jerusalem. And boy, that was so exciting because he looked like a king. And everybody got excited. And they were celebrating, and kids were singing, and they were cutting down these palm branches and laying them down and saying, blessed is the king who comes in the name of the Lord, Hosanna to the Son of David. I got really caught up in the excitement. It's been great. And so after all this celebrating, we've been getting ready for the Passover, and we're having a great time. I have to tell you, friends, I'm getting a little nervous because there are a lot of powerful people that hate Jesus. And now that we've made it here in Jerusalem, I just don't know what they're going to do, you know? So on the one hand, I'm like really excited, and then on the other, I'm kind of afraid. But, you know, like, everything is going to be all right, right? Like, really, I think everything will be okay.
You know
right?
what, John, everything is going to be okay. And we're going to hear some more this week about what else happens, and we'll hear the rest of the story. So, boys and girls, you've heard a lot of stuff from 3 of my friends today. Now, I have 2 things I would like you to do. First, if you can make your own palm branch, you can make it as pretty as you want, have your parents take a picture, upload it, and tag Holy Cross. We would love to see your palm branches to celebrate Palm Sunday. And then the second thing is stay tuned to our YouTube channel because we're going to be hearing some more stories about the events of Holy Week as the week goes on. All right, we miss you guys, and we'll see you soon. Bye.